Welcome to the Resonate podcast with Aideen. My name is Aideen Riada, and my guest today is Shannan Mondor. Welcome, Shannan.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Shannan is a very interesting guest. She has an amazing journey that she's going to tell us all about. But what I'm going to do is read a little about her to set the scene. Shannan is a best-selling author, podcast host, TEDx speaker, and transformational mentor. She created her business, Fulfillment and Faith, to teach others to have faith in themselves, which is the foundation to having fulfillment in every area of life. Shannan overcame her past and used her experiences to empower herself to change. She now uses the knowledge she gained to help others release their past and find greatness within them to live in confidence, strength, and freedom. Thank you so much for being here, Shannan. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
From this journey you've been on, we were speaking just before you came on about how your self-identity was one of the biggest things that changed. To give us an idea of how vast this shift was for you, tell us a little bit about your past and where you had come from and what kind of person had you believed yourself to be.
So, what everybody needs to know first about me is I grew up in a household of addiction, abuse, and mental illness. And all of that was generational. So, I don't know what happened prior to my father, but my father was extremely abusive and a full-fledged alcoholic. So, he abused every single one of my family members. And I'm the youngest of 8 children. And the abuse was so bad within our household that the brunt of the beatings were for my mother and also for my oldest brother. And then my father ended up committing suicide when I was about 2.5 years old. But it didn't stop because now abuse, mental illness, and addiction has been normalized within our family. So my family doesn't know any different. So what took place now was my oldest brother actually carried on the role of my father. So that's where my abuser came in. He was the one that abused me. So I grew up in a household where, from like the earliest that I can ever remember, I was told I was dumb, I was stupid, I was never going to amount to anything, I was good for nothing. And then, of course, once I got more into my teenage years, the name calling was absolutely horrible. And so what happens when you're growing up in an environment like that, I had no self-worth, I had no confidence. There was so much shame that went along with it. So my personality from such a young age was conformed around all of that. So what ended up taking place was I became a people pleaser. I was a chameleon, and I literally let others control my life throughout my whole entire life until I had my awakening to awareness, which didn't happen until August 17th of 2019. And anybody that's listening to this, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about because so many of you out there have definitely walked that same path I have. And it was at that pivotal moment, but by then I had already been living a life of addiction. I became a full-fledged alcoholic. Absolutely, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that that background can bring, and thankfully I did have alcohol in my family, but not abuse, which I'm glad about.
Mm-hmm.
There was more like different different things. Everybody has something, right? But
Yeah, they
what
do.
can happen is when you feel so rejected by people who are supposed to love you, it does create that imbalance of wanting connection, but not feeling worthy of the connection. So therefore, you felt like you weren't good enough. That's why you were trying so hard to
Mm-hmm.
connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine.
Oh yeah, like I had years of suppression, right? And that's why I let people literally walk all over me because I would build up a friendship and I really cared about the friendship. But then it almost became more of I wanted others to what could I do to make them so happy? It was never about me.
Hmm.
And I never knew what it really what it was like to experience that. All I would get is the hurt and the pain. But then I would go into the cycles of feeling sorry for myself. Do you know what? And it was just a vicious cycle over and over and over again. But yet I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to lose these friendships. So I would always put everybody else first over me. And I would always end up putting myself in situations where that would happen over and over and over again. So there were so many different cycles that happened throughout my life exactly like that.
Mm. I'm curious, when you were going through that phase, what was your self identity? You obviously thought of yourself as a good friend, but there was,
I thought myself as a good friend, but at that time, you need to realize too that I really didn't know what was really going on within me. You know what? I was just living a life of survival as well too.
yeah.
You know, I would always compare myself to others because we are also brought up in a society where we are taught to look to the outside world. You know, we're taught to look at materialism, how successful we are, all of that plays so much into it. So I always wanted to be like everybody else. So I didn't even really know who I was. I had no clue.
Mm.
You know, so there was always resistance in so many different areas of my life. You know, of course there was the jealousy and all of that as well too, right? But how could I possibly allow others to love me if I didn't even love myself? Because I was never taught that. I was brought up in a house where there was always, depression, anxiety. There was jealousy. I was never brought up in a house where it's like, oh, good for you, Shannon, or where I felt the love or, hugs and kisses and stuff like that. The first time that I was actually told that I was loved by my mother, I was 27 years old, and I was the one that said it to her, and she could barely squeak it out.
Wow.
But that's also because she didn't love herself. She didn't know what that was. You know, you can't give something to others if you don't have it within you. And that took me a long time to figure that one out. Right. So I had a lot of resentment and hatred towards my mother as well, too. But it wasn't until, like I said, I started to heal where I could actually see that, you know, and then I could have compassion towards her and my brother, which was my abuser.
When did self love begin for you?
Oh, well, like I said, I had been living a life for 50 years. On August 17th of 2019 was when I had my awakening to awareness. I'd literally hit rock bottom. I'd already been through treatment, several suicidal thoughts and attempts and, just different things like that. And when I woke up that morning, there was just something inside me that was like, enough is enough. Like, how much more can you possibly endure? You know what you don't want. It's obvious. So now what is it that you do want? And the biggest thing for me was, yes, I wanted to make the changes within myself, but I also looking at my children because I'd been normalizing this for so long. And it was like, no, I can't have this for my children. Oh my gosh. Like they're going to end up having an addiction because I could see it. Like it's fourth generation in our family. It was started with my father. It obviously started prior to that, but I didn't know, like my father's parents or anything like that. So it was with my father, and then it was with all me and my siblings. Then it's in my nieces and nephews, and I'm not saying all of them, but now it's also in my greats. And I was just like, wow, like I can't have this continue on. I'm the only one that can stop it in my family for my children, my grandchildren, and the generations going forward.
Hmm.
And so that was a really huge thing. And it was like, I got to figure out what it is that I want. I know that I don't want to be addicted to alcohol. I know that I want to be a good mom. And I know that I want to be a mentor. I know that I want to get healthy. And I know that I want to be happy. God, I want to be happy. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was huge for me.
Yeah, it's
That was
such
huge.
a big permission slip when you say, I do want to be happy and, understand that you deserve to have fulfillment and contentment and
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah. And the biggest thing too is like I was willing to now face what was really happening. Because in order for me to heal, I needed to really feel. I needed to, have my breakdowns and my crying, stuff like that. Like I needed to just not give a damn what people thought anymore. And I was willing to do it because I wanted to save me and my children.
So you were stopping trying to hold it together for everyone else around you, and you started
Mhm.
to be really truthful. You started
Yeah.
to let them see some of the pain that you were
Yeah.
in. Did people respond
Yes.
to that? Were you surprised?
Well, that was a progression all in itself, right? Like, yes, I had gone to treatment and stuff like that. And I did figure out, about a year and a half after I had gone to treatment that, yeah, I did want to go to treatment, but I was doing it more for everybody else than for me, because I was still a little in denial that, I'm okay. I can still drink and stuff like that. I did quit drinking for a year. And then there was triggers that ended up happening. And then I ended up just going back to my same old self, suppressing drinking alcohol and that again. And then I drank for about a year and a half. And then I could see that, like, the treatment center was, and that was just a beginning of my journey. It was just another tool that I put in my toolbox. And treatment doesn't save people. You have to save yourself. They can only give you the tools, and you take what you want from it. But then when my real journey started, yes, I needed to set healthy boundaries and stuff like that. But when you start speaking your truth and you start changing your life and start conforming to what you want, people have to change, and people don't like that,
Mm-hmm.
because people think that you should be able to change without them doing anything. And the more that I spoke my truth, and the more that I was open and honest about my addiction, and I wasn't going to hide anything anymore, people don't like that, because then it's a reflection on their life, and then they have to look at the changes that they make within. And now to this point in this day, I have nothing to do with my husband's side of the family, and I have nothing to do with my side of the family, because they didn't want to face their truths. Like, my whole journey was all about me, but what ended up happening is they made it about them. And it's like, how like, I'm still in awe with some things that have taken place.
Yeah.
Right. But you know what? I'm here to save myself, and I'm here to save my children. And that's just how it is. People don't understand, why I didn't want to continue with them in my life if they're still got an addiction, or they're still drinking in front of me and thinking it's a-okay and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it's not a-okay.
This comes
I
back.
don't want to be subject to that anymore. That's not how it is for me.
Yeah. And this comes back to this idea of your identity from their perspective. They saw you as a certain
Absolutely.
type of person, and that was hard for them
Yeah.
to change.
Yeah. And that was the big thing. If I wanted to be somebody that was no longer a non-drinker. So I have to move in that position of changing my identity of being a non-drinker.
Yeah.
And how do I do that? I take inspired action. And how do I do that? I no longer, be around people that drink anymore.
Yeah.
I have to become that individual that does not drink anymore.
Yeah.
And people don't get that. Well, you know, it's you receive in life what you are, not what you want. And a lot of people don't get that.
Tell me more
It's no
about that.
different than if you want to be a millionaire, you don't hang out with people that are in poverty. You have to be in the same vibration as what you want. And a lot of people don't understand that. That's the same thing with me too. Like, if you want to be I'm just using a millionaire as an example, right? Like, when I walk into a room somewheres, I never, ever, ever want to be the smartest one in the room. And the reason that I say that I don't want to be the smartest one in the room is because I want to learn and grow and get to the elevation of the next level of what's coming to me. That's the same thing. Like, if you want to be a millionaire, you want to surround yourself with millionaires, because you're going to start taking on their vibration. You're going to eventually start, learning things from them. And that's the most important thing. You have to be open to receive through different levels.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell me how, in the last year and a half, I know that you've had this huge transformation. You've started to speak more publicly about your journey. You've started to create ways for people to learn from you. Um, how, like that? I mean, from the person who was saying to family members, I need more space. I need to be away from watching people getting drunk or whatever, to now
Mhm.
speaking about it publicly. That must have been a big shift in itself.
Oh, I just did my TED Talk in January in Las Vegas, and, I got a standing ovation, and not a dry eye in the house, right? Because I talked about my experiences and how alcoholism and stuff like that is normalized, and how I was a wine mom in the wine mom culture and all of that, right? And, how alcohol is so easily influenced and pushed within our society. And Then the next thing you know, there's addictions happening, and then people don't want to face that there's addictions. And so it was a really, really powerful speech that I did, and it'll be coming out this month, in the month of June. So there is a process that you have to go to with the, so I carried that identity that my brother had given me all of those years. So that was a generational identity because he carried that as well. And obviously my father obviously carried it as well too, right? But the biggest thing that you have to understand is, and you have to go forward with, and you have to figure it out, is who do you want to be? Who do you want to be, and what do you want in life? And then once you can figure that out, right? And that's not something that you just shift into automatically. That's why it's called transformation. You have to transform into that individual,
It's a process.
right? And it's a process. It is a process. And then once I started on my journey of my process of who I wanted to be, then there was other opportunities and things that started to come in. Like I never expected to be, somebody who was going to be a best-selling author. And then I've got a podcast. Then the next thing you know, I'm a TED Talk speaker. And then the next thing you know, I'm a transformational mentor. And then the next thing you know, I'm talking on podcasts literally all over the world. And now I'm doing speaking engagements. I never would have thought that like 5 years ago. Are you kidding me? But once I started with that one simple thing of what I wanted to be a good mom and I wanted to be sober. Then from there, I started to get clarity. Then what had happened was COVID had taken place. And then I could see all of these people hurting desperately, right? They were numbing themselves with alcohol. And then it was like, okay, well, you know what? What can I do? Oh, you know what? Inspirational hit. God guided me. You know what, Shannan? Start doing quotes, putting them out on Facebook every day. That's what I did. Okay. Then the next thing you know, people are coming up to me and they're like, oh my God, Shannan, like your quotes are just amazing and blah, blah, blah. Then it's like, well, thank you. And then I get 2 emails from 2 different individuals that were on the brink of committing suicide. And then they were telling me how they looked forward to my quotes every day, because I always posted at 6 a.m. every day. And that's what stopped them, because then they had something to look forward to the next day.
Wow.
So you see how that was a ripple effect for them that gave them inspiration to continue on, just like I had the inspiration to go on through my quotes. Then I had the inspiration from them. I'm going to do a live. So I did a live. And I told everybody exactly what my whole entire life was, because they looked at me like I was just this amazing thing. And like the followers I got was just incredible within about, a 6-month span. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm lying. I'm lying to everybody. They're putting me on this big pedestal and this is ridiculous. So I had to share my story. So that's why I did a live. So that was inspiration there. Then the next thing you know, I'm like, oh my God, maybe I should write a book. So I wrote a book.
Tell us about the book, because writing a book is a huge identity shift in itself, becoming an
Oh,
author.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that process. I have some listeners that are really interested in the creative process. You obviously knew what the topic was, but how did you bring your thoughts together? What was your process? How did you manage that?
Okay. So with my process, it was really super easy. So I don't know if I'm the right one, but my why, my why of what I wanted to say in my book was so strong. My why of getting my message out there was so strong. And I think that is the biggest thing. If your why is so, so strong, God is going to figure out a way to get it to you. And my why was, all I wanted to do was save one person. Like those emails that I received from those 2 individuals, that impacted me huge. Like I could tear up now, because I was saving people. I would have never thought that ever, by like, being so vulnerable. And my why to write this book, like I said, I just wanted to save one person. So when I actually just really picked up the computer one day, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to start right from the beginning. So I started sharing that journey even before I was born, how the addiction was in our family and how my father abused all of my brothers and sisters and my mom. And then it just kind of flowed out of me. Then I started going into my childhood about how I was being abused. Then started talking about, my teenage years, how I became a people pleaser and like all of it. Then my 20s and my 30s and then my 40s, my marriage, like just everything. You know what I mean? And it literally just flowed out of me like, like I ended up writing my book in less than 3 months. And I didn't realize it at that time. And I didn't even realize it until after my book was published, how the book was there also to heal me.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I had no idea because my focus, like I said, my why was so strong. I just wanted to help other people. If anybody was going through what I had gone through or endured a childhood like mine and they were still struggling with addiction or mental illness or whatever, I just wanted them to feel better. And I wanted them to know that life can get better, but you got to work at it.
What's a
Yeah.
phenomenal story. And
Mhm.
I'm very impressed and admire anyone who can write a book, and to write such a vulnerable book is
Mhm.
really,
Well, mine's a tell all. Like I do not miss anything. I do not miss anything in it at all. And that was another thing which was really, really hard for people to understand was the book was about me, my feelings, my emotions, my thoughts, how I actually got to that aspect of addiction. And you can't sugarcoat it. You just got to be flat out vulnerable. And I was so vulnerable. And I know now that that's one of my superpowers for sure. Like I can, I don't know how many interviews I've been on and I just break down. You know what I mean? Like that's just who I am. And that just gives other people the strength that's listening to this story as well to know, oh my gosh, you have to have a breakdown in order to have a breakthrough. That's just how it works.
yep,
You just have to, because that's just shedding layers and layers of pain and agony that you've gone through.
yep. Letting it go
Letting it
doesn't feel
go.
necessarily easy because we hold on, and it can be a painful thing, but it is essential to build back up.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's what gives you the strength by all those experiences. The power within that pain is just unbelievable. And that is how I found my life purpose was within my trauma.
Wow. It became
Because there
fuel for
I've
you.
experienced absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There is no question. Yeah.
Before we start wrapping things up, Shannon, is there anything that you in particular would like to say to the listeners today?
I could talk forever. But all I really want to say is when it comes to identity, identity is so important. And I want you to really look at yourself right this moment. And if you have any resistance towards who you are and in your belief systems, you are going to know darn well that that is not your identity. Somebody that has created their own identity has confidence, has strength, has love, has power, and is able to really truly love themselves. And so if you're having issues when it comes to your identity and what I'm saying is really resonating with you, reach out to me because let me tell you, I love teaching people about identity because it's not only identity, you need the also hand in hand a vibration of who you are and what the vibration is which you grew up in. And that's a whole other show that I can talk about as well too, because I was brought up in the vibration of anxiety, depression, um, shame, all of that. And that goes hand in hand with addiction and abuse. So when you hear the phrase, you are who you attract, that is why I led such a horrible, destitute life, is because I attracted all of that into my life subconsciously, not consciously. And once I figured out vibration and I was taught all of that stuff, that was when I had total control of who I am, where I'm going, what I'm doing, and all of that now. And I can see it, I can feel it, I can taste it. I have total control in my life by changing my identity and my vibration.
That's beautiful. And we all aspire to step into our own power in different ways.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think we can feel powerful in certain areas of our lives. And then there's other areas we're still shy about, or we're still learning, and everything becomes a new evolution. So I
Mhm.
know personally, anytime I reach a new level, there's that little bit of self-doubt and who is this new me? It's like you're coming out as a
Yeah.
butterfly again.
Yeah.
So, and that's to not feel afraid, I guess, to, to know that this is a process. Like you said earlier, it is a process. It is a process, and it is a journey, and it is sometimes uncomfortable. You feel that kind of squeeze of, this doesn't feel right to me anymore. And you have to like shed that skin to move into the next phase.
And that's the thing too, is like once you get to a certain level of awareness and you feel that fear come on, you will know that, okay, this is where I have to go forward now.
Yeah.
I have to go forward because it's within that fear on the other side is where I'm going to grow. And then it's not so scary.
Mm-hmm. You understand it.
And it's like, okay, you understand it. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go forward. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to go forward. And that, like with me, when something pops up like that, I'm like, okay, man, oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm not liking the journey right now, but I know that it's going to open up so many doors for me. And this also gives me the opportunity so I can teach others through my experience, because that's my whole life purpose.
Well,
I'm going to do I've got another experience. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Right. And that, thinking about it that way is so damn exciting.
yeah. Well, it's been exciting to have you here on the show today.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I know that it just from perspective for anybody listening to this podcast, Shannan's TED Talk was live in January 2024, and the recording will be available, I guess, on YouTube and on TEDx.com in June 2024. So if it's already past that, please go look for that TED Talk. She got an amazing standing ovation. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself.
Yeah.
I will put all of your links into the show notes, Shannan, and I'm really grateful that you were able to be here today.
Well, thank you, Aideen. I'll tell you, this was absolutely amazing. And I hope that people learned from what I said today, because that's what I'm all about. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back again on the next episode of the Resonate podcast with Aideen. Bye-bye.